Hello, it is Andrew Logan here. Great to be with you for another Facebook Live. And if you're watching on the Facebook Live, as you can see, I have a fantastic guest with me here today, Robert Hollis. Now, I'm going to bring him in and give you all a proper welcome, but I just want to quickly explain why I reached out to Robert. And I reached out to him for two reasons. The other day, it was his birthday. So a very happy 60th birthday to Robert on the podcast. It was your birthday 3 days ago and 2 days.
Monday, yeah.
Yeah, we're in time zones. Whatever day it is for you, it's Friday morning for me here in Australia. But the other reason was he had this great Facebook post up on his wall. Now, Robert, I'll pop up his details and you can follow along with him. He does beautiful lives every day. He gives a lot of value on his Facebook. And he had a great post about Monopoly that I wanted to talk about today. So welcome to the show, Robert. Let's introduce you first. Welcome to the show. And Matt, I'd love to so we were just talking before we went live. I'm on the Sunshine Coast in Australia here, and we are having biblical rain. It's like a misnomer. There is no sunshine at all. We haven't seen the sun in 4 days. There's local flooding. It's actually a bit nuts. But you're out there in California. So what's the weather like for you at the moment?
Beautiful and sunny.
Beautiful and sunny, as always, right? I'm a big NFL fan, and watching the Super Bowl last week, and people are walking around in t-shirts and stuff. It's a little bit different to the US winters I used to do in Colorado and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, so, my wife and I are originally from Montana, North Dakota, and I think it's negative 24 there Fahrenheit. So that's just nuts. It's glad to be in California.
So, Robert, what I'd love to talk about is you had this beautiful post on your wall about Monopoly and the game of Monopoly. And I don't know if my parents are watching this. I don't know if my family are watching this, but I loved Monopoly growing up.
Yeah.
and it's like how to start a family fight, play Monopoly. It's kind of always that bit of a joke. But what I always won. I'm really quite competitive. I was the youngest, always got a point, but I always won Monopoly. And my strategy was so simple. And I think, looking back now, I didn't realize I had a strategy back then, but looking back now, I had the most simple strategy you could possibly come up with. And then all we've done is sort of duplicate that into our life, and we've been able to create great freedom in our life thanks to that. And you have this great post, and I'll let you actually say it, but just the sort of concept of investing and cash flow. And so often I love to talk about, I think people's mindsets on investing and that are a little bit wrong, because we think about, finding Bitcoin at $50 and selling it at 50,000 kind of stuff, which will happen occasionally kind of thing, but you can't take it to the bank, right? You can't bank on that every day. So I'd love you to come in and just let us know about your thoughts on Monopoly.
Well, first of all, Andrew, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I just love your book. I know I first reached out to you when I got that book. I did something wrong. You gave me an irresistible offer that I couldn't also buy. So if you guys haven't gotten Andrew's book and logged into some of his information, I'll have to ask him at another time who his mentors were. But man, I've been involved in this industry for 35 years. And just solid, basic stuff that, some people, forget about. You always go through slumps and stuff when you're not doing the basics. You know what I mean? And everything in life, including Monopoly, you got to know what the basics are. And one of the things of winning the game of Monopoly, for those of you that haven't played it, is you're really basically trying to get the other people in the game to not have property and not have cash flow. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Years ago, probably 2 years into my entrepreneur thing, someone shared with me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was one of those books that just really changed my paradigm of going, I'm treating network marketing like self-employment. I'm the end all to the end all. And I wasn't acting like a business owner. And I sure in the heck wasn't focused on investing. And so when there's a game that Robert Kiyosaki has, I don't know if you've played it, Andrew, called Cash Flow 101. And
Yep.
I played the game with my sons all the time. But the whole goal is that, whether you want to be financially free or have this lifestyle, I think financial freedom for me, Andrew, has done two things that have really shaped my life. A lot of the trophies that I'm blessed to have behind me are actually from charities. And so it used to be hitting number one. It used to be how many people I could get in the top 10. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, how much money could I give? Never expecting that if I gave a lot of money to a charity to help children, I currently support over 2,500 orphans. And you don't expect them to do a big deal, but they understand praise and recognition just like anybody.
Mm.
And so, so money's allowed me to have choices that other people don't have. And it also allows me to give a lot of money. So my goals now at just turning 60 is what percentage of the money can I actually give? At one time it was zero. I think I moved it up to maybe 1%. Then my goal was 10. And now it's closer to 80. So 80% of the money that I generate from all my financial aspects goes into giving to children. I was an orphan, so I give money to orphans. And so going back to the original post, I actually got that whole concept from Robert Kiyosaki. I got to give credit where credit's due. And it's like, you would never learn to play a game and then not focus on the thing that actually would get you further in the game. It's like, so further in the game is finding a way to, purchase your little first house and purchase your first property. And now what you want to do is make that piece of property more valuable, or to acquire more rent or whatever penalty it is for landing on that piece. And so, it's funny to watch people that play that game, that understand that game, what they really, they're going out, they want to land on certain parts. Of course they do. But when people really understand the game, you cannot have Boardwalk and Park Place. You could actually have something on the other blocks, but, with hotels on them, they seem to do really, really, really well.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of the post is the majority of the people on the planet, I was at one time, Andrew, wanted to change the numbers. I thought that I could actually take it from, if only 1% of the people in the world made over $1 million, or like 830,000, and 11% of the people make over 100,000. I wanted to change that number. I thought that I could go out there and share the information that you're sharing with the world to change that number. And that's still my passion. My passion is to educate like you're doing. And so when you first get in, you start making this income. If you follow the right path, you do the certain things, you believe in what you're doing, you believe that others can do it. Now, as you build this incredible team of people that are succeeding, now the goal is very, very simple. It's like, take that money and don't buy 4 or 5 new cars or buy a bigger home. You want to focus on making sure that you buy the things that are pleasure for us and nice for us with our money's money. And I got to be bold and honest here. I didn't catch on to that concept until my 40s. You know what I mean? So, when I'm in my 30s, I believe that the cash flow is never going to end. And so it's like I not only went on vacations, but I took everyone I loved on all the vacations and I paid for it all. And it's not that I couldn't do that now, but man, I still look back. It wasn't until late in life that I learned dollar cost averaging. No one ever taught me that, I could live this incredible lifestyle and just focus on taking every dollar that I had and getting those properties and buying those little hotels or little houses to put on there to eventually get them to hotels. And so it's sad that the majority of the world, and we're talking, gee whiz, we're talking 90% of all you that watch this video live or recorded, that you just keep going through doing the same thing over and over and over again, collecting that weekly check, living paycheck to paycheck. And it's like nothing changes unless you change. So I really love the whole concept, Andrew, that the people can hang around someone like you and go, wait a minute. Okay, so I first got to develop cash flow. But once I get cash flow, not to spend that on things that we can get just a couple of years later. It still can come, but I think about in my 30s, I got involved in this industry at 27, and I thought, man, in my 30s, if I just took the money that I created and bought more of the little plastic houses and put hotels on and leverage with people that were going slowly out of the game to purchase their property and purchase their homes, because some people jump into a situation too early and their cash flow doesn't allow them to, so now they're missing payments on those things. And it allows us to pick up things at a pretty low discount to do that. So that's why that post inspired me. I would just love people to say, man, I just keep doing the same stuff over and over, expecting a different result. And Albert Einstein said that, that's insane. And so that was the reason for the post, to sort of shake people up and go, wow, is there a different way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like the opening line of my book, isn't it? Like, is this the way? Like, or do I need to find a different path? Like, surely this isn't everything that I'm meant to do. But right. you hit 4 or 5 really big things, and one in particular that I want to circle back to. So every person I've ever interviewed, in a Facebook Live, in podcasts, always mentions Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, cash flow. You can also there's an online version now, guys. So if you're too sort of modern and young to buy a board game and sit around a kitchen table, you can play cash flow online. So don't worry about that. And also the couple, I mean, I'd love to dig deeper into this, but maybe another time, because you said something that was super important. But charity and giving money, and the quote of people who say money can't buy happiness haven't given enough of it away.
Amen.
And I know, like, for Angie particularly as well, like, children and animals, they're her 2 things as well. People who can't look after themselves, and people who just don't have a voice, and they're the charities that really drive her and drive us. And it's a big thing, obviously, when we can donate to the school, and it's like, can you give an hour for this? And I'm like, well, can I just give you a check, kind of stuff. And that will have, and it's not that I don't want to give up an hour of my time at all. It's just, I know I can have significantly more impact of doing that. And so the second quote that I thought of there as well is, it's not about living forever. It's about building something that can, and if you're giving significant money to charities, and especially orphan-based charities, you're changing generations, and that can make a huge impact. So I would love to talk about that more. But the thing that you said, and I want to hit it because I want to make sure everyone heard it, was when Robert said, you can have the toys. Of course you can have the toys, but have that little bit bigger vision, and you just put them 2 or 3 years further down the track. I know there's the kind of YOLO and FOMO and all that kind of stuff, but you said when your money's money is buying you the toys. And I know that's a Robert Kiyosaki line as well. Whenever he's like, oh, I want to buy a Ferrari. And his wife's like, well, you've got to find an investment that can buy you the Ferrari. Like, you're not allowed to buy the Ferrari, but you can buy an investment, and the investment can buy you the Ferrari. And so that's really just that key mindset, is that making money is step 1, but step 2 is having your money make money.
Right.
And when your money is making money, then you can have that freedom of choice. Then you can have, then you can go out and buy the car and not have to sit there and think, I'm going to go into debt for this thing. Now, you're still going to go into debt for the car, but if your investments are buying rather than your own personal cash flow.
If you're doing it correctly, you can get that car and those homes at a discount with cash. It's another thing that I learned. And I never ever thought that I would ever be in a position, because of people smarter than me, that if I needed a line of credit, that I'm now my own bank. I never, ever thought of that. So to think about having enough money and investments that if you need a line of credit, that you can make one call, and Goldman Sachs says, what's your routing number and your account number, and then bam, and you're going like, well, what are the payments on that? And they're like, the payments are nothing. You're borrowing money against yourself. And I'm like, what?
Mm.
It's like, wait a minute. If I knew this stuff when I was younger, I would even have
Yeah.
pushed harder. You know what I mean? I would have pushed harder because it would have allowed me to help more people. And that is the key to happiness, without a doubt.
I'll just, for the sake of playing the devil's advocate for half a second, I'll just put a little asterisk on that point, guys, that when banks get very generous with you, you have to be very disciplined. Like you
Yeah.
have to, like you, and I know, like I've had that conversation with some people where, we love property and, we invest heavily in property. And so the banks, once you've got a few property, it's obviously they become more and more, flexible and more generous kind of stuff. And so that also requires more and more discipline. And it is that sort of Jim Rohn mindset of like, it doesn't get easier, you've got to get better. And so the first one or two investments are going to be the hardest investments. But then you do need to make sure that you're more disciplined, because you
Right.
can, and as you said, people can get themselves into trouble by over leveraging too quickly.
Yep.
And I did that. And I mean, thankfully I did that when I was like 23 and single. And I kind of got all of that out of my system. And I mean, I'm just about to turn 40. So the GFC was when I was 25. So, I feel very grateful that I was young enough to learn, I was young enough to bounce back and old enough and wise enough to learn a lot from that GFC. But
Me too. When I read Think and Grow Rich, it said that people save their money and learn wealth building after they lost it all 3 times. And a lot of your followers will probably resonate with this. I was going like, yeah, you give me $1 million one time. How could I be that stupid to lose it? And I am on my 3rd time. So it's like, even when I thought I had it going on in my 30s, like you, Andrew, I'm very proud of you and what you're teaching to people. There was still some lessons I needed to learn. And unfortunately, there's no other ways to learn them. You hang around a lot of people that make more money than you, and you find out that they did the same thing. So there was things that I really believed in and over leveraged myself and over committed to my part. And I'm 60 years old, so I don't mind telling my failures. But it was just when it seemed like you couldn't fail if you invested in .com companies. There's just no way. And I see that happening now with crypto and NFTs. A lot of people got to know that when something gets crazy, that allows a lot of other people that don't have you in their best heart to jump in. And so I'm smarter this time. But, the FOMO, as you talked about, and it's like, oh, my God, it's like I always can tell on social media. It seems like when everything is going up, is everyone's posting, hey, did you see that, crypto hit or Bitcoin hit 68 or 67, whatever the high was. And I just don't see a lot of them posting today. It's pretty interesting that, that stuff happening in other countries can actually affect the stock market. And what people don't realize is that technology is technology, whether you want to believe it or not. So, what is that? The FUD and, for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, when that gets around a lot of people and they, do some crazy stuff. Are you at the right mindset that, oh my God, this is the time that I have been saving for? And people are like, oh my God, the little bit I invested is now cut in half. I don't have any more money to buy at the dip. So it's pretty funny. It's so.
Yeah, I think it was Brian Carruthers, I think, who said it the other day, is like, everyone's sort of talking about buying at the dip. Make sure you've got money to buy at the dip. It's
that was a couple of years ago that you should have been planning on that.
Yeah. And not financial advice, obviously, and it's very hard to catch a falling knife. It's very hard to find the bottom of the dip while you're in there. You can always find them in hindsight. It's very easy to look back at the middle of the chart. But I cop a bit of stick from friends because I've been openly cautious and of Bitcoin and crypto, and people are like, oh, you're missing the boat and you're old and blah blah. And it's always been like, I'm never critical of the technology. The technology is moving. The technology is fantastic. it's being cautious of human emotions. And whether
Yeah.
you're trading, spices, whether you're trading tulips, whether you're trading .com shares in companies, whether you're trading, like a lot of things. It always comes down to
Virtually
human
everything.
human
Virtually
nature. And
everything.
once greed and speculation gets rife, you do need to be cautious and be aware of
Right.
what's happened in history, and even just, as I said, 15 years ago with some of the newer exotic Wall Street things that were coming out, and your collateralized debt obligations, your CDOs, stuff like that. That was obviously easy money. And
Yeah.
and anyway, we could go down this path. I might just stop
Yep.
it there because so I don't offend anyone. But again, I want to come back to this thing with Monopoly, and it's something I didn't realize until afterwards. I didn't realize until we started playing it again with the kids, and it's obviously a very different when you're the youngest and you're trying to prove a point and you've got to win, whereas when you're the adult and you're trying to play a fun game with your family and just bring in the learning lessons. And you start looking back at this game of Monopoly and realizing, and the big thing, and my strategy, and you mentioned it as well, my strategy was light blue and orange. Just try and own a corner, cheap, find the cheap corner that you can own, because they had better return on investments.
They did.
And they had more reliable, more consistent. And now I think, I was captain of the maths club, right, Rob? So I've got this really nerdy maths mind. But
I'm a geek. I'm a geek from the dork
yeah.
course.
I remember even like recently playing it with the kids, and my maths mind is sort of working away that, when I was young and I would own a corner, it was almost like you were saying, anytime someone rolls the dice, I'm going to make $35, $40. Just the power of like consistency and your expected value. And just at some point over every 10 rolls, you're going to make $4,000 or $400 or whatever. So for every roll, you're going to make $40 basically. And you could just bank on that. You could take that to the bank. And that was the point. And so when I look at that in real life, and what we're talking about here is there is an honor in society in going into debt for your education. And I did that. And there's an honor in going out and getting the big business loan. And there's an honor in when you start in investing, it's your first investment, buy the most beautiful home you could possibly find and stuff like that. And the first home I bought was not that impressive. The second home I bought wasn't that impressive. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, they started to get a bit nicer. They started to get a bit more impressive. And, now we own a beautiful family dream home and all those sorts of things. But you just look at sort of the game of Monopoly, and you were talking, we called it Park Lane and Mayfair, probably slightly different names for you, but the two royal blues at the very end, and everyone wanted them. You got to get them, but there's only two of them and they're very expensive. Why not buy the cheap ones just around the corner that generate so much more money and like a 10 times return on your investment, and you've got that consistency and you've got that reliability. So then
my biggest secret was it seemed like no one wanted the utilities and no one wanted the railroads.
Oh, the railroads. I was all over the railroads. I would sell my soul for the railroads because that was $200
because I would trade early in the game. I knew that there was a number of players that were playing, and that someone didn't. Oh my God! I landed on the railroad. They would land on it, Andrew, and I would say, "Hey, if you buy it, then I'll give you another $40 over what you paid for it." And they go, "What? So are you telling me if I buy this for $200, you're immediately going to give me $240? Yeah, and you make $40." And they'd go, "Whatever." Until later in the game when they're shaking for 10 times the roll of the dice. And they're like, wait a minute. I've given you $240 back, and I'm going, yeah, you have. So
what I did, the railroads were the classic because it was like 25 for 1, 50 for 2, 100 for 3, and 200 for 4, or something like that. It was the classic compound investment strategy, wasn't it? That one railroad wasn't that exciting, but 4 was, and it was they were every 10th square on the board, so you were getting $40 a roll, sort of thing, so $20 a roll essentially. So sorry, just circling back to that. So,
well, not to interrupt you, Andrew, but
no,
if someone took the time in this world to not only understand that there is a game, But to find out someone like you that's taken the time to figure out the game, it's like I hope your listeners will hear me say this. There's two statements that I say to everyone. If what you know that you know that you know to be fact is not true, when would you like to know that piece of information? And of course, everyone says, "Oh, right now, I don't think so." You say you want to know now, but you don't. But there's two ways to learn: from your mistakes and from others' mistakes. And so I just learned from my mentors that it's so easy to go to someone that's already made the mistakes and say, "Listen, if you're playing Monopoly, what do you go for first?" And then other people want to immediately go, "No, I think that's stupid." You know, I think they maybe played the game longer than you. They got 60 years of experience. It really, really pays off.
Hmm. I want to talk about that, like as you say. I remember someone. It was a quote, and it was sort of like, if being like understanding that you're on the wrong path. It's like being woken up from a nap. It's like being woken up from that afternoon nap, and you're really cranky at first.
Yeah.
And then you're actually like, no, that was probably a good thing that you woke me up from that nap. Like I was probably sleeping for too long and I needed to get woken back up and back into my
I love
life.
that
But
analogy. I've never heard it. That's a great
yeah, and it's like
analogy.
initially you're quite, why did you wake me up? But as I was saying before, that the world, and especially with the internet, and like what we can do now thanks to social media, thanks to internet 2.0 and all those sorts of things, the ability to create cash flow isn't talked about enough. And
It's not.
again, like it's so much about, and I put $100,000 into a university degree to get a great career, and I still so many lessons that I learned back then I still use now as a health
Sure.
science, and being healthy is important to me, and knowing how to move my body incredibly important, all those sorts of things. But that's sort of just the normal, right? But then if you put $1,000 into trying to create some cash flow online, people are going to doubt you, and
Right.
people are going to say like, why are you doing that? What, just go and get a business, go and get a brick and mortar thing, go and get a degree. Why do you think we're so cautious and skeptical of someone putting $1,000 into starting an online business?
Well, it again, we are a product of our environment. I grew up around blue collar people. I was a mechanic, and so you look. It was funny because schooling was not important where I grew up. All my uncles, I had six of them, all owned their own business.
Hmm.
And the idea is me hanging around these people. So I always had a job because I could work for one of my uncles, whether it was plumbing, electrical, contracting, construction, whatever. It was just, I was really blessed that way. And we also worked in the oil field. And so the concept people would say to me is, Robert, what's the reason to get educated? And my response was to get a job. Okay, you can work today. You know what I mean? And so I believe that getting a job and having a lot of pride, getting a home, getting married, having a couple of pets, couple of kids, the picket fence, whatever that dream of your environment is. And so it was always based on hard work, and start by sweeping a garage and work yourself up someone's corporate ladder. Um, but that's it.
Hmm.
I never ever had any of my uncles go, Robert, instead of working for me, you should start your own business. Even though they all had a business, none of them said, Robert, you shouldn't be working for someone your entire life. There is a better way, and you could be an entrepreneur and offer other people a job because they want to work that way. So thinking about starting your own business, I even say this, I think that we still don't dumb it down enough, Andrew. Um, I think about in my teen years, if someone said to me the word entrepreneur, if someone even came to me with some of these silly approaches, and I hope you don't use these, but if someone said, "Do you keep your business options open?" I mean, don't anybody ever think that people grow up in environments where it's like, what do you mean business? What do you mean entrepreneur? What do you, I don't understand these words and what they mean. Oh, I know what they mean. You're trying to paint something that take my money away, the hard-earned money that I'm saving to get a better car or get a nicer home or to buy a jet ski or a wave runner. You can see that I'm older. It's like now they're called, what are they called? Watercrafts, you know.
We've still got jet skis in Australia, mate, because we're 20 years behind. So technically, you're 40 in Australia, so
Yeah, so I
we're behind
remember
that.
the bumper stickers, and I don't know if they had them there. You know, the one that has the most toys wins. And
Mm,
so this consumerism starts at a very, very, very young age. You know what I mean? So even if you had a sort of a used, crappy, unreliable car, you know, the goal was to put a nice exhaust on it, or nice tires and rims, or a very expensive stereo system in it. You know, I think at one time the stereo system I had in my car was worth more than the car. So, you know, you really got to focus on, you know, what's important in the environment that you grow up. So the long answer to your question is someone during that time, even if I had money saved up, would have said to me, hey, you ever think about, you know, taking a couple of grand and starting a business online? I would be going like, what the hell are you talking about?
mm,
Why would I ever be interested in doing something that I'm not good at?
yeah,
I'm a
and I
good
think
auto mechanic, Andrew. I'm
mm,
not, that's my identity. I don't need to be doing stuff that I'd suck at to start at.
mm. Well, I think there's, I mean, as you say, there's a material judgment, and I'll kind of circle back to that in a sec. You know, there's sort of judgment on your materials, on what you wear, on the car you drive, like subconsciously and consciously in society. And I mean, I always sort of say to people as well, no one's looking for a business because businesses sound hard, but
Yeah,
it's like, you know, can I help you improve your cash flow? Yes, but tell me about your business. No.
right.
But and also, like I remember, and you were sort of talking about it with the mechanic thing, like environment's stronger than willpower, and the environment that we're in can just overpower our willpower. Unless, so we've got to change, we've got to have the willpower to change the environment. But I remember one of my mentors, and the person who really introduced me to all of this, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and we'd talk about financial freedom, and that was actually an employee of mine. And we'd sit there at lunch and we'd talk, you know, we'd share books that we were reading, you know, which was
Yeah.
like no one else did that, right? But like I remember we'd sort of talk about, again, I got a health science, a physical therapy degree, and in 4 years at university, never once did they sit down and say, okay, guys, this is how you actually like book a patient. This is how you market your physio practice. This is how you do a yellow pages ad, as we all did 20 years ago. Like you never learnt those things. I could fix pretty much most things in the human body, but it was like, can you actually book a patient? I don't know how. Like, and so,
Well, how do I get the patients that even know what I do?
yeah, and then I think, like, again, from a scarcity mindset point of view, like in every, you know, in so many sort of professions, certainly if you go and work for someone, they're only going to give you so much business experience, because if you get too much, you go out on your own, right?
Yeah,
You go out and
you
live.
turn into competition.
Yeah, and we'd always talk about the, you know, the Goldilocks zone of the perfect employee, because they had to be reliable, you know, and you know, in physiotherapy, they had to be smart enough to get a degree. They had to be. I keep knocking my microphone here as I'm trying to do hand gestures. For all those listening on the podcast, I apologize. That's what that noise is. But you know, they had to be like, you know, decent enough to get a degree and show up on time and all like that. But they couldn't be too entrepreneurial. They couldn't be
Right.
too innovative. They couldn't be too brilliant, because they were going to leave. There was only so many positions you could offer them in a small business. And so that was one of my biggest challenges. And it was like, well, for someone to come in and start any kind of business, any kind of entrepreneurial thing, they have to be willing to be bad. And they have
Yeah.
to be willing to be bad enough for long enough to get good enough.
Yep.
And unfortunately, there is that material judgment. And I'll tell you a super quick version of a story, because it's something I'd always remember. And, you know, for Angie and I, cars just, we drive nice cars now, but cars have never been a big thing for us. And we own them outright, and we bought them outright and all that kind of stuff. But so for years, we were driving these quite crappy old cars because our money was going into buying properties, and our money was going into investing in ourselves and doing courses and reading books and investing in our team and investing in everything and giving to charity, and all our money was going there. And we'll just happen to buy these cheap cars.
Hiring coaches.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a toddler as well who'd throw food around the back of the car. So it was like, why buy a nice car when the toddler's just going to trash the thing? But point was, we had an event, and I was speaking at this event. So they put us up at this very nice 5-star hotel next to the conference thing, and it's valet parking only. And my car had literally died that day before. I'm in the shopping center the day before. I put it into reverse to pull out of the thing, and it just dies.
Where's Uber when we need it?
Yeah, and I rang the mob, and they're like, "Mate, we're just going to take it straight to the wreckers. Like, it's dead." I was like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Well, we're going to buy a new one anyway, and it's about time." So we were driving my wife's car, which was even older than mine, and we drove it into this 5-star hotel with valet parking. And I just always remember the judgment of everyone looking around. And it was sort of like, well, like, I'm kind of speaking at this thing and we're doing okay, but like everyone's just going to make an assumption of us based on the car that we've got just at that moment in time, because it wasn't part of our financial plan. It was like, this financial plan is that when we go out and buy the nice cars, we're going to buy them, and we're going to buy them in cash, and we just walk out with the dream cars that we've always wanted.
I love that story.
And have no other attachment to it, sort of thing. And so it's interesting, isn't it? Just that for so many people, there's the fear of failure, the fear of losing money, that, all that kind of stuff. But there is such a fear of judgment. Yeah. Such a fear of judgment in everything we do. And people will send themselves broke trying to convince other people that they're not broke.
Right.
And it's that vicious cycle that people are really just making decisions based on what will other people think of me.
Yeah, you brought up the whole concept about clothes. I can remember, I just can remember there's people that it means a lot to, and you can see with my shirts. I remember, my whole goal was, when I get to a place where I didn't need to impress anybody anymore, that I was going to dress the way I wanted to. And so the first time that I spoke at an Eric Worre event, everyone's dressed to the nines, Matt, tailored, everything. And I met Eric at a convention in La Jolla, California. And he said, "Listen," he says, "I know who you are. Could you please speak at my event?" I said, "Sure." And I can remember, he said, "Well, make sure that this guy mics you up and everything." And then I came out on stage, and when Eric seen me, he goes, "Hey, listen, I'm still not at this guy's level." And I never thought that I would get someone like that to say that about me, because he was still worried about how people seen him with his dress, his jewelry, his shoes. And I come out there in my Jesus sandals, and my Tommy Bahama shirt, and I just said, "Listen, when you can show up who you are and just be who you are." And I go, I want to be prepared. And if Eric says, "Hey, listen, let's go to the Bahamas when we get done with this training," I just want to be prepared.
You wouldn't want to go to New York or something, would you? Just a little bit there.
So, I still dress in Tommy Bahama shirts, and that was, believe it or not, Andrew, right before I turned 40. Before I turned 40 is like, because when I was a mechanic and I got involved in this industry, I swore I'm never going to wear a suit. I'm never going to put a tie on, ever. And that changed at one convention when the people were speaking, picking people to speak. And I said, "How do I get on stage?" And they went, "Well, it's based on your income and your production." And I said, "Wow." And so all of a sudden I found out that people made more money if they did present. And that was a different level. We're all scared to speak. So you get a little higher respect if you speak in front of the room. And then all of a sudden I went, no, I don't want to cut my hair and shave my beard. And
it's a chicken and egg scenario, isn't it?
It is.
I I was going through Robert's Facebook to try and find a photo of this interview, and I found a few photos of you with your big beard, and I thought it was pretty out there. But Matt, I want to honour your time. It's sort of coming up to that 45-minute mark now, and so I want to honour your time and thank you for everything you've said. And I know we could have unpacked 2 or 3 other topics in depth, and so we'll have to get you back another time and collaborate for another thing. So, guys, if you do love what Robert's talking about, if you do want to follow him, I tell you, he does it. It's pretty much daily. You don't seem to miss a single day. He does a daily live on his wall, so you can follow him. His website's up on the screen here. If you're listening in on the podcast, it's Robert Hollis with a double L. IS. I'll put it in the show notes as well. Or you can just follow him on Facebook or on Instagram at Robert Hollis SR HOLLISSR. So, Matt, as I said, I want to thank you. What you were saying there, one last lesson I just want to leave with, and a friend of mine posted it just recently, is like, when we think about what will they think, when we think about, what will they think, we're often just thinking of one person. We sort of say they to kind of soften it, and everyone must be thinking, but really we tend to think about one person. So an exercise you can do is think, well, actually, who is the one person I'm concerned about here? And then, does it really matter if that person thinks, I wore a Hawaiian shirt on stage? Does that one person really, really matter? And then once you kind of have that mental exercise, the they disappears, because there's never really a they.
I remember hearing a statement from Oprah that I still say today is when the people that you think about, you're worried about what they're thinking about you. It's sort of shocking when you really realize how seldom they do. So we're thinking, oh my God, what's Andrew going to think about me? That's sort of patting yourself on the back, because Andrew's busy thinking about a lot of other things other than you.
It's almost like, again, like, what's Robert thinking of me? And Robert's thinking, what's Andrew thinking of me? And I'm like, well, I'm not thinking of Robert. I'm thinking of what's Robert going to think of me. Like, we just sort of go around in circles in our own mind. And I mean, it does remind me of the kind of, the meme of like, wives worry more about what husbands are thinking than husbands actually think. They
don't really.
What are you thinking about? Absolutely nothing.
Like, and I remember Jay Shetty, I started following him when he first came out. He said, to show you how messed up we are psychology-wise, it's not that we're just thinking about what other people are thinking. We're thinking what other people are thinking about us. It's like we're 3 thinkings away, and we're not even in the ballpark. So it's like, oh my God, I wonder what these people are thinking about me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're not thinking about you. You know what I mean? Well, wait a minute. I think they are. What are they going to think? And I mean, I'm sure you can do courses and weekends on overthinking.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I really, I can't wait to do a total review on your book. I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm sure the audience that's watched this live or replay might have his book, but I know that when I get to post this to all my people, I hope, Andrew, that you put someplace underneath there where they can get. My thing has always been escape. You know what I mean? People want to escape from prison. People want to escape from their country. Some of the awful things that are happening in the world. It's this constant thing about escaping, right? And so when I seen your book and it's The Way Out, I was going like, man, this has got to be right on track. And so far, me reading the book, it is right on track. So thank you for being a service to other people. I really appreciate doing this.
I did just end a thing to end on. I haven't said this to you, but I did notice you stole the line of my chapter on one of your Facebook Lives about 2 weeks ago, and I thought, Robert's read my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's at least read chapter 1, because your Facebook Live was, if not this, then what? And I thought, he's borrowed that. So I dropped a little love heart on it. I thought, thank you for you've actually read it. Like, I think, and again, people like, what if someone copies me? It means that they're actually appreciating what you've done. Like, you've seen that, and as you say, I mean, that was always my thing of like, there's this fork in the road kind of thing when I was about 25, and which path do you go down? And so that's what inspired that book cover, and I'm glad it inspired you too. So
It has. It has.
to everyone who's jumped on live, thank you. To everyone who's listening to the podcast, as always, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your support and everything you're doing to help support the podcast and get the word out. Rob, we will definitely have another one, because I haven't even got into last week. I interviewed Brandon about him and Lynette building together and couples. And I know we talked about that quickly on Messenger beforehand. I haven't even talked about you and Terry building a business as a couple. And that is something that's very passionate. That's a big passion for me as well, about helping people build with their spouse. So we'll get you back and we'll talk about some more things another day. Thanks everyone for being on live, and we'll catch you all soon.